Today we are going to focus on improving and measuring your capital improvement program. But first, some introductions. My name is Dan Connery and I am the Director of Product Marketing here at eBuilder. I've had the privilege of working with architects, engineers, contractors, and owners over the last 23 years while working for companies such as Primavera, Newforma, and now eBuilder. Joining me today is Brett, a Senior Solutions Engineer here at eBuilder. Brett has been with eBuilder for over 5 years and has more than 20 years of experience in engineering and construction market space. Brett's passion is helping owners find the right solutions for their challenges and improving the way they deliver projects. So for our agenda today, we will start with an overview of eBuilder and how we work with customers across the entire life cycle of their capital improvement program. We will then talk about the before and after picture of your capital improvement program, and we will finish by answering some commonly asked questions. 1 in every 6 healthcare provider is already a customer of eBuilder, and to date, all of our customers have managed over $300 billion in capital improvements through our platform. Most of our customers started their journey with eBuilder using paper and Microsoft Excel to manage their capital programs, so if this describes you, don't feel bad. They recognized this ad hoc method was not scalable and was resulting in projects over budget, behind schedule, and with far too many surprises. They realized they needed a centralized program management system, resulting in the implementation of eBuilder. As they progress through their journey with us, they automate their numerous business processes. And this results in a fully integrated system. One customer leveraged $70 million in savings from active projects to fund a new research facility several years ahead of the original planned start date. Another customer reduced approval times from 16 to 2 days, and in one instance processed a change order approval between 3 different companies across 3 different geographies in under 35 minutes. And finally, we had another customer whose volume of annual construction expenditures tripled without the need to add any additional staff. And we are proud that our customers are recognized as top performers in their markets. So what does the ideal program management information system look like? You, as the owner, should always be in the center. You have your groups on the same system getting access to the same information pertaining to budget, cost, schedule, scope, and quality. Then, key information is made available to your internal stakeholders from dashboards and reports, 3D designs to your stakeholders, forecast and payments to your finance team, and so on. Then, in a secure fashion, bidirectional communication and information flows to all of your external contractors. Architects submit design revisions and help answer your questions. CMs and PMs manage detailed cost and potential change orders. Suppliers send submittals, and so on. All of that information flow is managed through a business process management system that is smart enough to know who has to approve what and when, and who has the latest version. All of this on a program management information system where all information is safely stored and accessible anytime, anywhere, and on any device. We designed eBuilder to work the way you as an owner do your business, not the other way around. We provide robust capabilities to manage all of your projects. Intelligent forms allow you to collect the information you need that can be routed through an automated workflow. AppExchange connects your accounting and other enterprise systems, eliminating duplicate data entry. You can manage program and project costs starting with capital planning, through estimate to construction baseline and changes. The robust document management system enables automated version control and audit trail. We provide value across the entire life cycle of your project, including capital planning, design, procurement and bidding, construction, and facility operations. We provide you with data-driven insights into the health of your project so you can make informed decisions. There are 3 main capabilities, starting with industry-leading business intelligence capabilities for rich, executive-ready graphical visualizations, drill-through dashboards, and simple tabular reporting much like Microsoft Excel. All of these are delivered to you on your choice of interface, whether they be your favorite internet browser, iOS or Android app, or even just email. Let's take a look at the capital planning project as it exists today. Submitting a project request is just a small part of the overall project intake process. The people submitting the projects want to know what is the status of all the different requests that they've made. Those responsible for receiving these requests have many questions of their own. What is the status of all current requests? Is there funding? If so, what projects can start and when? And how does a project request stack against all the other requests that they're considering? Before eBuilder, our customers told us this process was chaotic and with some equating it to a black hole. Here is an example of the real cost of poor planning. A major healthcare provider, due to poor planning, overlooked annual maintenance and upgrades, resulting in an unexpected cost of $100 million. As a result, they have to consider shutting down one of their locations, and you can imagine the significant negative consequences of this. Now let's take a look at how this process greatly improves with eBuilder. Brett is going to show you how people can initiate projects by filling out a simple web form and how submitting this form initiates an automated workflow. Looking again at the two groups we started with, the people submitting projects now have full visibility into their project requests. Those responsible for reviewing these requests can now make well-informed decisions because everything is tracked in eBuilder. Everyone is automatically updated, and this results in full transparency. Now let's take a look at how this works with an eBuilder. Over to you, Brett.
So thanks, Dan. So welcome, everybody. Typically, whenever we are engaged with a customer, and we being the sales executive and myself, when we're on site and face-to-face, we typically ask a couple questions involving the planning process. We ask, when does a project become a project? And how are you managing your project requests today? Are you prioritizing them as well? We have common answers that, yes, you might have a tool, but that tool is typically Excel, but you're in the business of aggregating information. It's not really transparent, but yet those things need to go through a business review cycle, but Excel passed along email is really not the best method to do that. So let's focus on that today. So imagine if you had a centralized project, a project of where you're capitalizing all these requests in your 1, 3, 5, or 10-year capital plan. In this case, I have a 5-year capital plan project, and I'm only running a business workflow process through this capital plan, right? And I can collect all of these in a register form and see what the status of these. This is an example of just a standard view in eBuilder, to where you don't even have to run a report, although reports are handy. But you can come in here right to the processes register and just look at, see where the project request, what's the list of them, and then how they display in the register. And you can pick a handful of fields and have them displayed at your leisure, like you see on the screen. But let's go back to that fundamental question. When does a project become a project? People have ideas. Those ideas typically have a business process behind it. And through that business process, that's where our workflow in eBuilder really can capitalize on that. So let me give you an example. Imagine you start in an intake process. It's an idea that's at that point. And maybe perhaps it's a replacement of a boiler. Maybe it's a small project versus a capital project. In this example, what you see here is that I've got a workflow that routes basically for 2 different project types. Maybe it's a capital project type and a small type, right? The gray shapes you see at the top, maybe that's the small, and maybe that doesn't warrant a very rigorous process for review and approval. However, down in the red, whenever you get into the capital, maybe that requires a little bit more control. Decision points are also considered for the level of decision points are also available to maybe look at the delegation of authority, the limits of authority, such as, in this case, 4 million, anything over 4 million, it has to go to a director before it goes to the person in charge to prepare the project information. So you can get really creative with these project intake forms and through the process and replicate it specific to your business process. So imagine if you're capitalizing on this and using this for review and approval, you're getting out of the business of actually taking this information into an Excel sheet and having estimates of those projects and there's really not good insight of how that's going to be, going through the process. So imagine you have a form, and that form you're going to fill out. And when you fill that out, that basically you can fill it out either through eBuilder, but what's very common with the project request, eBuilder has a unique situation where they can take any workflow process and make them URL enabled. What that means is that I can have any start layout of fields that you want to fill out, and I can have that URL, send it to your IT department, and they can post that up and attach it to like a project request button. So what you see in front of you is basically a simulation of internet, for example. So now I have flexibility. I could either be a user in eBuilder, and I can kick off a project idea or project intake process. Or on the other hand, maybe it's more convenient, I go to the website and I just click on the project request button. And what you see in front of you is an example form. You have complete control to develop this form however you deem necessary. That means that includes all the fields. You can break them out in sections like I have, maybe some project details information. Maybe this is a boiler replacement. And maybe it's a more descriptive project. This is the boiler replacement for the Charlotte Medical Center. And then, what's the status? Right now it's an idea, but as it goes through that workflow I just showed you, you can have it to auto-populate the status. And eventually it's going to be vetted out and somebody's going to say, hey, this is a planned project for 2019 Q4. And you can get creative with these fields as far as the intake process. In my example here, this is ABC Healthcare in the Carolinas, a fictitious company. It's a healthcare system. They have several hospital entities, and I can get creative from parent-child relationships with these fields to say, hey, here's a Charlotte Medical Center, so therefore it can only be in the city of Charlotte. So you can set up really good criteria to make sure you're capturing information the right time, the first time. But what about churn as well? There's times where, let me just ask the question, how often do you receive these project requests, but you're not given enough information about them? They forget to give you certain information. Make certain fields required with a red asterisk to avoid that churn of going back and forth and back and forth. So whenever they fill out the information, whether it's just the project details or other details that you want to explain about the system, maybe it's general information, is it equipment related? If so, specify. You also want to be sure to put the start and completion date of the project to understand the timeline. Maybe it's a bed tower. If it's a bed tower, what are the number of rooms or what are the number of beds? These are just ideas I'm presenting to you, but you would have total control of how you want to develop the screen and all the fields and the sections that you want to display that's relevant to your business review cycle. Also, we have a common theme that, these projects become political, these requests do. And if they're quite political, there's oftentimes that we have a scoring and measuring capability is a requirement. Sometimes they don't do that, and you just let the executives prioritize them. But in this case, I have a scoring section that maybe you're required to score based on certain criteria and conditions. And as it goes through that workflow, it's actually being calculated with configuration and weighted with those scores, which presents maybe a probability score at the very end, which helps you prioritize these projects and make better conscious decisions. So whatever those fields look like and whatever your form looks like, the important thing is make sure the fields are set to be required that you want to capture right the first time, right? And as they hit submit, it will create that project request. Now, again, as it goes through that workflow cycle and it goes through the different constituents that need to review that, somewhere down the line, maybe it's the director, maybe it's the person in charge who's preparing this information, or maybe it's the executive at the very end that often may even measure it twice and calculate it twice. Whatever that situation is in your workflow, eventually somebody's going to give it approval and say, I want this project to be in 2019 Q4. So capture all the information that we have collected from that form and say, go ahead and approve it to a planned status project, and it automatically creates that project gathering the information you've collected from that workflow form. So what does that look like? So basically what happens, it's going to populate the processes, and it's going to populate all those requests in a register like you see here in the processes view. But that's only one part of it, right? So we support the planning process with what we call the capital planning module. So at the top in the planning tab, you will see a capital planning module. And the benefit of the capital planning module is taking those planned requests, those plan status requests that somebody has vetted out, and they say, tee up the project manager, send them a notification to say, go create an estimate for that project. Or maybe that's part of that project idea process. And as they create those estimates, they may break out those estimates in detail, or they may be, maybe it's just a preliminary estimate, right? It might be something that's preliminary, and maybe they break it out in detail later, and that's fine. You can update these estimates as often as you wish, and publish them up to the capital plan. So imagine that you're a project manager, you're going to an e-builder, and you're creating these estimates, and you publish and you decide which is the start, which is the finish date. So now I have a timeline associated to my costs, something that Excel lacks, right? You may have it just documented as a start and finish date, but not only do I have a timeline, we also can apply cash flow curves from your estimate to make sure we understand how the dollars are actually spent between months, quarters, and years. But more importantly, how does it affect my bottom line? So if I have funding, so for example, if I have funding at the top where I list various types of funding streams, I only listed one, capital expenditures. You could have several different funding sources listed there. And so I'm taking the funding and looking at my planned projects, but what does my cash flow look like, right? In some months and some quarters, especially in the middle of a construction, we're going to be spending a lot more. But on the front end and back end, maybe not, like a bell curve, right? So what does that look like? That's something that Excel would lack from a point where you're trying to capture that information and look at that holistically of dollars across time. So let's take that comparison of funding minus my projects across time. What does my cash flow look like? So let's look at 2015. We're look like, based on the projects, the 4 projects that I've added, these scenario estimates that I've added to my plan, looks like I'm okay. I'm in a positive of $2 million. However, 2016, for some projects I have in that time frame, I'm minus $5 million. So that's not good. So it gives you the ability to play around and say, well, this project here is for $72 million. So maybe I need to kind of move that project out and not start it at Q2 of 2016. What happens if I move it out to maybe to Q4? And how does that impact my cash flow, right? So now you can see down below, yep, now I'm in the positive cash flow. I'm no longer in a negative. I'm not impacted in 2015 anymore, and 2017 even looks good. So that is the benefit of the capital planning module. It gives you that full transparency. So when somebody asks you the question, how are you performing with cash flow? Comparing your, some executive may come to you or management say, how are we looking for our future projects between 2015 and 2017? And how are we looking as far as our funding streams and funding sources coming through the system? And what does our cash flow look like? It's very hard to do in an Excel. So that's the benefit of our capital planning module. It gives you that. And to Dan's point earlier is that now, not only do I have a mechanism to be consistent of capturing these requests and the reduced churn as far as the required fields and have it go through a review and approval process through eBuilder, allow the email notifications to be sent to whomever it's sent to. So it's not somebody forcing an email, it's an after effect. Email notifications will be sent to you when it's your turn to review. Then also provide the visibility and transparency into where those projects are and what's the status. I could have a field here that says project status, and it could show me that it graduated from the idea to something preliminary to, yeah, it's truly now a project slated for 2019 Q4. So that's the benefit. Any questions?
Through the workflow process of capturing project requests, can you adopt our business rules as it relates to how we score, measure, and rank our projects?
No, that's a great question. I don't know if you caught it earlier, but when I showed you the project intake form, maybe it's not at the initial step. Sometimes they might have it at the second step or the third step, But more often, let's face it, healthcare projects can become very political. Doctors want certain things done in a timely manner, replacement or enhancements, upgrades to facilities. So a lot of times our healthcare clients will take the opportunity to apply some scoring and measuring type of capabilities. So this is an example at the bottom. I have several criteria. You would define what that criteria is yourself. You would define what these fields are. In this case, maybe it's a score that they put here from 1 to 5. And it's weighted. So as soon as I put something in here, such as compliance being maybe a 4 based on what I think is a 4, and then I hit submit. And basically after I hit submit, what happens, you can pre-configure the system to calculate and weight that score and provide a probability score at the very end, calculating all of these conditions with that total probability score. And that helps to prioritize the projects. Maybe some of these score projects with a high probability score are prioritized before others, right? Or maybe not, but that whatever your business rule is. So you have the ability to do that, most certainly.
Our medical center is connected to the university. How do you tackle situations where the medical center has its own business process, which is different than the university? I don't want to have to build a double of every process in eBuilder.
So let me go back to this diagram here. The example I gave earlier, I was trying to discuss a decision once you hit submit based on small and capital projects. I said the gray represents maybe small workflow paths versus the red being maybe more of a capital workflow path. It's a great question. I've worked with a client, it's the Ohio State University, and they got together with the medical center, and they had that same situation. So similar to just project types, they used that decision right here in blue to say, are you the medical center or are you the university? And they had a slightly different path, but when it came down to the very end, they all connected to the main constituents, such as the executives. So that's the benefit of eBuilder. It provides you flexibility that you can actually produce just one workflow. If you are a medical center that works in relationship to a university, you can get together and build these together if you like.
In your capital plan, you showed us a list of projects in the plan status with estimates to those projects. I assume the project manager updated this. Our project managers are constantly updating our estimates. How does eBuilder handle this, and how does it know when a PM updated their estimate and timelines to those estimates?
Earlier, I didn't show you what the experience is as far as drilling into these projects and understanding the dollars and how we came up with this $70,000, for example, for this elevator, right? So basically, when those project requests go through that process I showed you earlier, they're going to eventually say this is a planned project. A project manager typically is notified via email to say, hey, you need to provide more details and break that out. And when they do that in the project. So if I click that project, it will actually open up the project in the planning estimate for that project. And it's a preliminary estimate, so let me do that. And when I open that up, it's basically take me to the project, to the planning module. So I'm going to close this down to give me a little bit more real estate. And I can break these out in various ways. In this case, it happens to deal with equipment and construction services with those equipment. And we just broke it out in two different ways. But notice that not only do I have the information here that it's broken out by lump sum, it could be by unit cost if I wanted to. And I can keep adding more line items, I can even break it to unit cost if I wanted to, or maybe it's square foot, or even a formula based on what I have up above. So it gives you quite a bit of flexibility to do a full estimate. But more importantly, what about the timeline of that estimate? So now I can have a start, and it starts in March 2019, ends in May, and then after that we hit the construction services once we receive the equipment and do some installation. So you can add your timelines to this, and so when you promote that and publish that to the capital plan, that's what's sending the message to the planning manager at the program, at the planning module that I've been showing you, and it tells them, hey, go look at that estimate. Now, earlier I showed you that So here's an example of that project at 70,000. But look at this little mark over here to the red. Let's face it, you're not going to have the estimate you've done the first time going to be right. You might just have a bucket of money that you think it's going to cost 70,000, but maybe it's going to eventually go up. Maybe I want to break that into several different categories other than just the equipment and construction I just showed you. So this is a case where a project manager has promoted this up to a capital plan, and they said, oh, I need to revise it. They revised it. When a condition like that happens, you see this red circle with an exclamation mark. So the planning manager would log in and say, oh, okay, somebody has updated their plan. I'm going to click on that, and basically it's going to give you a summary of changes, right? It's going to show you what the actual was, what's been revised. But sometimes it might be a little hard to see it here, even though I could see this right here. But if I want to look at it from a full comparison standpoint, I can do that by clicking this link. And what will happen, it'll open it up and give you a full comparison of the breakdown, the estimate we just looked at. And it tells me here quickly that here was my original estimate of 50,000. So we went up 15,000 for the new elevator 1, for the hospital, for the elevator 1. And nothing changed for the other 2 elevators, 2 and 3. So hopefully that answers your question. The benefit is that, yes, you will have several scenarios as a project manager. You're not going to get it estimated correctly the first time because it is going to evolve until it's eventually approved to establish a budget. So at this point in time, yeah, you could put a preliminary estimate and then later come and update it. And the nice thing about it, again, in summary, is that the planning manager who has access to the capital planning tab would have that transparency, understand who's estimating things, and determine if they want to accept that or reject it and collaborate to that project manager appropriately.
You showed the cash flow at a summary level. Can I see how that cash flow dollar is spread across time for a single project?
Yes, so earlier I showed you the detailed estimate for the elevators. If you recall, it showed the elevator 1 installation and also the repair of the 2 other elevators, and there were dollars associated to them. So when they publish that up to here, basically I can click on any one of these blue bars to see the actual cash flow that the project manager estimated and distributed across time. So maybe let's take a look at one of the other projects. Here's the one for 72 million, one of the bigger projects. Again, if I double left click this blue bar, it's going to display a graphic illustration of your cash flow. The project manager would be in full control of that estimate and how they want to apply this. So for example, maybe this starts off in design an inverse S-curve. It started off in a bell curve, but maybe the project was put on hold or something in May and it dipped down, then the traditional bell curve proceeded. So based on your permissions and roles at the project estimate level, you can dictate how you want to spread this dollar across time, in addition to taking advantage of the curves that are already applied.
Thank you, Brett. To wrap things up, I wanted to remind everyone that eBuilder is a full program management information system. In today's webinar, we reviewed how to improve and measure your capital improvement program. We focused on the planning phase of the project lifecycle, how you can leverage or customize existing forms or even build your own, as well as how to leverage workflows to greatly improve the project review process. As you can see, we only covered a very small part of the overall eBuilder platform today. For those interested in learning more about how eBuilder can help your organization, please visit www.e-builder.net and click the Request a Demo button in the upper right-hand corner. Or you can email Julia at the email address shown on your screen. Again, thank you for joining us today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.